This is Rick Gualtieri, and this is another Tales of a Midlist Author. Today, what I wanted to talk about was what almost has become a religious debate amongst authors, both new and established. And it's something that pretty much every self-published author who's going to publish in ebook format is going to need to decide at some point or other. And that comes down to, do you go for wide distribution, or do you stay in Kdp Select, which is Amazon's exclusive program? And I mean, this, if you look at it from the outside, it seems like it's a pretty easy answer. You know, wide, more people, that's better. But it's really not that easy of an answer. And especially if you're a new author, you're putting out your first book, you're probably going to think, okay, what do I do? Do I put it everywhere? Do I put it nowhere? What's this going to affect with regards to if I want to do paperback? What if I want to send it to like a reviewer? I'm not here necessarily to tell you what to do. That's really your choice. But I'm here to just explain kind of the pros and cons of both, and hopefully give you enough information to make an educated decision. The good thing being that you're not necessarily jumping into one and excluding yourself from the other forever. There are time commitments involved, but if one works, hey, that's great, go with it. If one doesn't work, you have a chance to switch out. So let's talk first about Kdp Select. That's Amazon's Kindle exclusivity program. When you sign up for that, you're basically saying, okay, my ebooks are going to be exclusive to the Amazon platform for 3 months, with the option to renew. And in exchange for that, Amazon is giving you some perks. So first of all, that time frame is 3 months. Yeah, I think you have a grace period of 3 or 5 days, I forget which, when you sign up, where you can say, okay, this isn't working, I'm gonna opt out. After that, you're expected to stay in there. Otherwise, Amazon can come down and basically do anything to say, okay, you're not allowed to be in Select anymore, to all the way to saying, we don't want you on your store. That last one's a little extreme, but just keep in mind, if you're going to play the game, what the possible risks are there. So you sign up for a 3-month time period with that. Once again, the option to renew, it is set to renew by default, so that's something to look into. I'm not a big fan of renewing anything by default. I kind of like that choice, so I usually like to go in there and uncheck that box, but just to let you know that. First of all, this has nothing to do with paperbacks or audio. It only affects ebooks. Your paperbacks can be out there on Barnes & Noble. You can be in like a local bookstore. It doesn't matter. Same with your audiobooks. This has nothing to do with them. So let's just get that out of the way. This is only ebooks, and that means you're only giving them. You only have them on Amazon. You don't have them on your blog. You don't have them on Wattpad. You're definitely not selling them on Barnes & Noble. You're exclusive to Amazon. Now, that doesn't affect like review copies. If somebody comes and says, hey, I want to review a book for my huge blog, you can still send them one of those, or you can gift them one through Amazon. But if they know how to sideload, I just email them one. It's not going to stop you from doing that. But you're not allowed to sell it or give it away somewhere else. So that being said, what are some pros and what are some cons? Well, one perk is you get a couple extra percentage points, and it's not a couple. You go from 35 to 70. That's more than a few, depending on in certain countries. I think India is one of them. Used to be Japan. That might still be the case. If you're planning on going wide with like international, that could be a factor. I haven't really found that to be too much of a perk as far as things go. So take that as you will. More importantly, though, Amazon gives you options for promotions. You get 5 free days. You can do countdown deals, which essentially is kind of a time deal where you say, hey, my book is 99 cents for 2 days, $1.99 for another day, and then it goes back to its regular price to give people a chance to get it at a discount. And you could also opt in to do some pay-per-click advertising on the Amazon platform, which they do allow. So that is one perk that you don't get if you're outside of that, is that Amazon will allow you to run deals on their platform. One thing you miss out on is the concept of perma-free, which we discussed, I think, in another installment of this. You really can't do that if you're Select, but you do get 5 free days where you can say, hey, my book's free. Works best if you have multiple books. If you have one book out there, the free day probably not going to do a whole lot for you. The other one, and this is probably a big one, is it makes you a part of the Kindle Unlimited program. Kindle Unlimited is basically Amazon's subscription service. People pay a certain amount, and every month they can download books that are a part of this without paying anything more. Originally, Amazon was paying authors by just the borrow. Somebody borrowed and read through 10% of the book, that counted as a borrow, you got paid for it. They recently changed in July, and the reason for that is the old system favored short stories. So hey, if I put out like a 30-page short story and somebody read 3 pages, I got credit for that. Versus if somebody picked up your 1,000-page novel and read through 100 pages, same amount of credit and you got paid the same for it. And this is just my editorial. I think it kind of gave it was awesome for legit short story writers. No issue there. But I think it also opened the door for people to game the system and like put on, okay, here's my 5-page story that I typed in my sleep. No edited, nothing. Somebody read it. Somebody picked it up and just read enough to see that it stunk. But you know something? At that point, it's already too late. They've already crossed the 10% threshold, and now that person's getting paid. Now Amazon has changed it so that it counts against pages read. This kind of sort of screws over those legit short story writers a little bit. But at the same time, if you're a novelist, it puts the emphasis now in your corner, where basically it says, hey, you have a 300-page novel, we're going to count those pages. If people read 30 pages, we're going to pay you for 30 pages. If people read that full 300 pages, that's what we're going to pay you for. And they switched that out starting in July. I'm a novelist, so before this I was mostly wide, and I decided to, at this point, full disclosure, to do a test and say, hey, Amazon's new system, it's favoring novels. I write novels. I was seeing kind of a slow spot on the other platforms this month, so I decided, something, this wouldn't be a bad time for a test. So if you're viewing this, starting in July of 2015, at least for the next 3 months, my books are part of Kindle Unlimited. So we'll see how that pans out. This is a business, and the reason for this is businesses run on data. And before this, I had one book made. I had a couple of low sellers in the Kdp Select. None of my big sellers were in that, and I decided, something, the data I can get for this, even if it's an abject failure, will be invaluable to me as I move forward in my business. And hey, if it's a success, why not? Another perk, and this isn't so much a perk, just something to consider, is most people would think, well, hey, going wide makes sense. There's millions of people who don't have a Kindle. But here's the thing, there's a lot of people who do have a Kindle. And there are some authors who are exclusive to Amazon and Amazon only, and they are making a very nice income doing that. So just something to consider, that yes, you can be exclusive to Amazon and you can do very, very well. If you're thinking that, well, hey, if I don't have that iTunes dollars, I'm going to sink. That's not necessarily the case. You have to find what works best for you, but in some cases, please know that this is a very viable option for some authors. The cons, as I already said, not everybody has a Kindle. Not everybody likes Amazon, especially if you're going global. In the U.S. here, when you talk ebooks, people are talking Amazon, Kindle, what have you. When you go outside of this country, Amazon does have a presence, but it's not nearly as big as we might think about it here. So that's something to consider. Your international audience could be huge potentially on those other stores. So let's talk about going wide. So say you decide instead that your book, you want to go as wide as possible. There's tons of stores you can look at, but the main ones you're probably going to care about are Apple with their iBooks program, Barnes & Noble for Nook, Kobo, which has a huge international presence, and the Google Play Store for folks who have Android devices. Those are 4 big stores, 4 stores where people can do some pretty good business in. Now, how to get into those stores? One decision you would look at is, do I want to go direct to all of them? And you can. You can load directly to all of them the same way you can load directly to Kindle. Or you can go through an ebook aggregator. The 2 big ones out there are Smashwords and Draft2Digital. And the benefit of going with them is, well, you're loading one place and they're taking care of the legwork of loading to those other stores. Because yeah, it can take time. With more than 10 books out there, going wide to to 5 or more stores, that takes quite a bit of time. And also, Smashwords is a store unto its own, so that's like another one to take into consideration. The downside of going with an aggregator is, in some cases, you're kind of at their mercy. They're formatting all their stuff the way they want to format, in a lot of cases, especially Smashwords. The other is they're taking a percentage. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're taking a percentage. Now, if you're sitting there going, hey, that's saving me hours of work, giving them 10% of the deal or so is more than worth it to me, then by all means, it's one place to look at your stats. It's one place to check your sales. It's one place to market from. It makes life easier. That's the whole point of an aggregator, but you are paying that. Going wide, going direct, that does require more work, and in some cases requires special software because you can't upload to iBooks without having a Mac or having access to a virtual Mac or such. So something to keep in mind. So perks. What are the pros of going wide? Well, the big one is a potentially wider audience. You're casting your net wide. You're potentially going to get much more people. There's a lot of people with iPhones out there. They like iBooks. There's a lot of people with Android phones. They're in the Google Play Store. There's a lot of people who just don't like Amazon. A lot of extra audiences out there. The other is from a business standpoint, from a long-term, and this is something I believe in. I'm not necessarily a fan of putting all my eggs in one basket, because if that crashes and burns, I'm kind of shit out of luck. Whereas casting your net wide, if you can build up an audience in all of those stores, if you can make it reach a point where hey, even if 50% of your business is coming from those stores and the other 50% is coming from Amazon, that means if Amazon dries up, you still have at least half your business that you can concentrate on growing on. That still gives you a leg up. So that is probably the biggest potential perk. The problem being that you got to get there. So the cons, well, each of the stores has its own quirks. Not all of them are necessarily as friendly as Amazon. I personally think Amazon gives the best tools out there. That's just my opinion. But each store has its own quirks and how you're going to format your stuff, how you're going to upload it, how you're going to market it, and you have to figure out that for each store. You can't. It's not just a set it and forget it deal where you say, well, hey, this worked on Amazon. Let me load it up to Google Play. It'll work the same. No, they load up different fields. They load up different there's different ways to get your keywords out there. That all takes a lot of work. It's each one is its own puzzle that you need to figure out. Two, you need to build up that audience, which in some cases is difficult because whereas Amazon is pretty friendly towards indie books, not necessarily all the others are. It's if you go to Barnes and Noble and you start just surfing randomly, you're mostly going to see titles from the big six. You got to dig or do searches, kind of deep to find those independent books. It's not necessarily you're not necessarily going to be put on the same standing as you might be at Amazon. It is possible to crack those eggs. I know personally, I've had some pretty good months on Barnes and Noble. I've had some pretty steady good months on Google Play. Kobo, still figuring out, and iTunes has kind of been a seesaw for me, up and down. But it is possible, and I've heard of some authors who are doing really well, especially if Apple's on the iBook store decides to give you a promotional push. You can do very, very well there. So, but once again, each store has its quirks that you need to figure out. Takes time to build up things from your marketing efforts. Trying to send people to okay, 5 different stores can be a bit challenging. You probably want to invest in splash pages on your website, hopefully get people to all these places. And the other thing is, it can take a hell of a lot of extra time to put your books on these. Now, if you're just the type who's going to list your other books, or maybe this is your first book, that's not going to take a lot of extra time. You're just going to format it, put it up there. You're going to put a Mobi file on the Kindle, and then you're going to put an EPUB file on the others, and you're good. But once you get multiple books, assuming that you want to link to those books in your About the Author section, which I personally prefer. I think that's the proper way of doing it. Just my opinion. Other people might differ. But here's the thing. If you're doing that, that means you have to have a different file for each store. So right there, we talked about 5 stores, 2 aggregators, and it's worth being on those aggregators regardless, because outside of those major stores, they can get you into some minor stores out there, which is, once again, if you're casting wide, you might as well go wide. So right there, you have 4, 6, and including Kindle, 7. That's 7 major bookstores you can be in, and that's not even counting some of the smaller ones that you could go direct. So say you have 10 books across 7 stores. That's 70 different versions of files that you need to maintain, so that when I come out with a new book, I have to update every single book to add that new book to the about the author section, make sure I have the links right and such. And that can add up to hours upon hours of work, especially when I start uploading them, because some places, one thing I like about Kobo is really quick to really easy to update. You hit a button, you upload it, you're done. Amazon can take a little bit of while, especially if you want to look at the previewer. Nook, same way. Apple, I got to go commandeer the kids' Macintosh and and put that on there. We're talking easily that can eat up a day or two, just for a minor update. And then if I could say, oh, hey, I found a typo, let's start that all over again. Something to keep in mind is that going wide typically also requires a lot of extra work. I suppose you could just say, hey, I'm not going to link to my books, I'm just going to list them. That might be a valid way of doing it. It's really hard to track how many people click from your book to the next book. I'm a big believer in inconvenience. When somebody reads book 1, I want them to read book 2, and I want to make it as easy as possible for them to get to book 2. That's just my personal opinion on it. So those are the pros and cons. What should you do? Once again, that really is up to you. My advice would be for a first-time author is, personally, I think it makes sense to keep it simple. Sign up for Amazon, do the Select thing, especially if you do have a novel-sized book out there, because now, once again, Kindle Unlimited does favor novels. So that's just my personal opinion, but and if you do sign up for it, just remember it is only for 3 months, and if you don't like it, you can move elsewhere. One bit of caution I will say is, if you are playing that game of, once you're in Kindle Select or Kdp Select, you need to stay in there for 3 months. Once you're out, you can come back at any time. So you could leave a month later, you realize I have 0 sales anywhere else, and you can come back. I'd probably give it more time than that. Once again, it does take a little bit of time to build momentum in those other stores. One thing I would recommend not doing is, if something is working, don't change it, because that's a good way to really screw things up. If you're in Kdp Select, let's face facts. We all realize the grass is always going to be greener. If you're in Select, you're always going to hear about somebody making bank at iTunes. If you're wide, you're always going to hear somebody who's cleaning up in Select. If it's working for you, if your endeavors are profitable, your sales are on the rise, stay the course. The time to test really is when sales are waning, you're in between book releases, and you really have nothing to lose by trying something different. That really is the time to test, and that was kind of my thoughts are. I'm probably a good 2 or 3 months away from my next release. As I said, I've had a soft month in the other platforms, and I decided, something, this is probably a perfect time to do a test, especially since they just changed the rules to make Kindle Unlimited more friendly towards novels. But once again, that's my individual business, my story, my what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my own data. You need to look at your data before making these decisions. Okay, well, there's plenty more I could talk about on that, but I think I talked your ear off enough with regards to this subject. Hopefully, it gives you the basics, and allows you to have a little more insight into what you want to do before you make that decision. So, once again, my name is Rick Gualtieri, and this is Tales of a Midlist Author, and I sincerely hope you're enjoying this series. I know I am. Thanks.